Episode 3. Red and blue lights flashed as neighbors gathered quietly along the sidewalks, whispering among themselves. Police cruisers, ambulances, and flashing cameras transformed the once peaceful neighborhood into a scene no one could have imagined. A stretcher rolled in quickly across the front lawn. Lonnie lay motionless, his face pale, his white shirt stained with blood as paramedics worked frantically to stabilize him. Yellow crime tape stretched across the entrance of the mansion Grace had called home for 14 years. Police officers moved in and out of the house. Grace stood on the sidewalk with nowhere to go. Somewhere in the confusion, everyone thought Grace belonged to someone else, and no one realized she belonged to no one. Grace walked. For the first time, she wondered where people went when there was nowhere to go. For the first time in her life, she didn't know where she was going either. In the blink of an eye, Grace had become roofless. And now for episode 4, written by Kelly Alston, told by Sonia Lampley.
Roofless, Episode 4, The End of the Line. Grace opened her eyes. For a moment, she forgot where she was. The bus was empty now. The families, workers, teenagers, and strangers who had climbed on and off throughout the night were gone. Only Grace remained, curled against the window with her arms wrapped tightly around herself. The driver glanced at her through the rearview mirror. "Last stop, young lady." Grace sat up slowly and looked outside. She didn't recognize anything. The streets were darker here. Several buildings were boarded up, and the few businesses that remained open were protected by metal bars. An old shopping cart sat abandoned near the curb, and a flickering streetlight struggled to illuminate the sidewalk. Grace looks back at the driver. "When does the bus go back?" "Morning." Her heart sank. "What time in the morning?" The driver studied her. "Where are you trying to go?" Grace opened her mouth, then closed it. For the first time in her life, she had no answer to that question. "Somebody waiting on you?" Grace looked down at her empty hands. Her phone was inside the mansion. Her money was inside the mansion. Her clothes were inside the mansion. Lonnie was in a hospital. Frankie was in jail. "No," she whispered. The driver's expression changed. He had seen enough people in his years behind the wheel to know when someone was lost. And Grace was lost, not just in the city, in her life. "You can't stay on this bus," he finally said it, his voice gentler now. "I'm sorry." Grace nodded. She stood and walked slowly toward the door. The moment her feet touched the pavement, the doors folded shut behind her. The bus pulled away. Grace watched its red taillights disappear into the darkness. Then there was silence. 14 years old, alone, no phone, no money, no family she knew how to reach. Grace pulled her jacket tighter around her body and looked up and down the unfamiliar street. That was when she saw them. Across the street, beneath an overpass, several people gathered around a small shopping cart filled with blankets and bags. Grace froze. One of them looked up. A woman, older, tired, wrapped in a coat that was far too tight for the night. The woman stared at Grace. Grace stared back. And for reasons she couldn't explain, Grace suddenly became afraid. She had been taught to fear people who looked like them. What she had never been taught was that before the night was over, one of them would be the first person to notice that she was hungry. Frankie sat in a cold jail cell, staring into space with tears streaming over her cheeks. She wasn't in the jail anymore, not in her mind. She was back there at the moment it all began, earlier that day when her phone had rung.
Frankie and Lonnie were sweethearts. Well, that's the way the story goes. Frankie bought everything for Lonnie, from his fancy cars to his Ivy League clothes. The boy was sharp, all right. Oh, but he was doing her wrong. Just to show you what can happen, a friend came running to Frankie. She said, "You know, I wouldn't tell you no lie. I saw your man riding in his Jaguar with a chick named Kelly Bly. Oh, he was your man, honey. But let me tell you, he was doing you wrong. Let me tell you what can happen." Frankie dashed around the corner and peeped in a swingy place. And there she saw old Lonnie with a woman, smiling with his arms around her waist. Oh, he was a man, all right. But Frankie could see that he was doing her wrong.
Frankie knew Lonnie had seen her and would follow her home to explain away about his discretions, telling lies as usual, trying to convince Frankie to believe him and not her lying eyes, but not this time. Frankie's rage was filled with years of humiliation and heartbreak. Seeing Lonnie with his hands all over a younger woman who was wearing Frankie's favorite diamond earrings and kissing like he was in love for the very first time, as if there was no Frankie, no Grace, just the usual selfish Lonnie. When Lonnie opened the bedroom door, something happened in Frankie that pushed her across a line that she could never uncross.
Let me tell you about the story. Frankie reached down in her Birkin bag, you know that thing, and up with a long 44. She shot once, twice, 3 times, and Lonnie fell on that hardwood floor. Oh, he was a man, all right. But Frankie shot him because he was doing her wrong. But the last thing he told her was, "Frankie, you know that I love you, baby. Why'd you want to do it, Frankie?" Now I was telling her about you, Frankie. Now you know that I love you, baby. Now you know that I love you, girl, 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 pretty baby. Crazy about you, Frankie. Why'd you want to ruin me, darling? After all you done for me. Listen here, I'm your man, and I'd never, never do you wrong.
The sound of a metal door slamming shut pulled her from her thoughts. She sat alone on the narrow bunk, still wearing the clothes she had worn earlier that day. She looked down at her hands. They were the same hands that had signed checks, the same hands that had fastened expensive watches around Lonnie's wrist, the same hands that just weeks earlier had handed him the keys to a brand new Jaguar, and now they were the hands that had pulled the trigger. Frankie closed her eyes and let out a scream that could be heard all over the cell floor. You have listened to episode 4. If you enjoyed it, please like and share. And remember, listeners' discretion is advised.